Your
Yeah,
video,
my PowerPoint.
you will be visible through and through. You will be visible through and through.
Okay, so you are recording.
Yes.
Okay, good. Do you
Yeah.
put these on YouTube?
We don't put up the full videos.
Okay.
So we just put up like really tiny sections of some interesting thing
Well,
that you're talking
save it.
about.
I don't know if I should try to record it too. I think I might try to record as well.
So Tanishka can send that across to you.
I did a run through yesterday and I thought I did really, really well, but I don't know if I'll do so well tonight. I'm a little slower in the evenings than I am in the mornings, you know. So
Fine, I'll send the recording afterwards to him.
okay.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
send.
All right. So good evening, everyone. We have Vasu with us, and I'm privileged to have the opportunity to introduce him today to everyone. He just mentioned that he'll be taking all questions once he's done with his presentation, once the session opens up to the audience. Yeah. So Vasu X Vasu is an American artist who has lived and exhibited in India for over 20 years. Noted for their exquisite detailing, his contemporary miniature paintings extend their visual vocabulary to a style reminiscent of Mughal miniature paintings, Mewar court miniatures, and the company school. Vasu poetically transfers narratives into rich and symbolic visuals with the help of a band of skilled traditional painters. The paintings are multi-layered and dense in narrative, blending genres and playing intelligently on themes interwoven from history, colonialism, and contemporary identities. In the paintings, Vasu often features as the bumbling protagonist who is observed and embraced by Indians. Part confessional and part comical, the paintings are semi-autobiographical and evoke issues of otherness and the transcendence of the same in a way that is problematic yet poignant. His books, Indian Poems, the photographs published by Gallery Publishers in 2006, Men of Rajasthan, published by Serendia Contemporary in 2011, Photowala, hardcover was eventually published in 2014. Photowala, published by Tasveer in India in 2016, and Gauri Dancers by Mappin Publishers in 2019. His recent book, Karkhana, a studio in Rajasthan, is co-written with Anupama Garimala and Giles Tillotson. The artist has lived and traveled for over 20 years and has finally made his home in Udaipur, Rajasthan for the past 13. He collaborates there with a variety of local artists. Vasu X Vasu's work is held in collections at the Haggerty Museum of Art, Marquette University, US, the Asian Art Museum of San Francisco, the Museum of Art and Photography, Bangalore, DAG Modern, the William Benton Museum in US, as well as others. Since 2002, he has formed a vast personal collection of Indian printmaking, including etchings, lithographs, linocuts, and woodcuts. Numbering over 200 individual prints, the collection has been exhibited at the India Habitat Center, New Delhi, and the National Gallery of Modern Art in both Bangalore and Mumbai. This collection has been the subject of a book, Between the Lines, Identity, Place, and Power, by Lena Vincent Sunish. The collection has been donated to the University of Iowa Stanley Museum of Art. He's represented by Gallery Espas New Delhi, Gallery Latitude New Delhi, Gallery Isa Mumbai, and in Thailand, Vasu is represented by the Serendia Gallery Bangkok. Thank you so much, Vasu, for being here, and over to you, and we hope to listen to you for a while.
Okay. So now I have to find my large. How do I get my screen large so I can call up my presentation? Will this happen automatically?
You can just select share screen.
Share screen.
At the bottom, there'll be a green icon.
Okay, share screen. Okay, I got it.
Yeah. You'll get a bunch of options. You can like do a full screen and then click on share.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay, so this presentation is called The Game to Play or Not to Play. First, I want to thank Satyajit Dawa for inviting me to do this. And I want to thank Harshaw of Iram Arts for also sponsoring this. I'm very happy to be here. I'm the last speaker in this suite of talks, and I feel I was put at the end because I'm kind of the outlier, and maybe I'm a bit of a heretic. So this talk is going to be a little heretical, and I made the presentation directing to young artists. So this is directed to young artists who have like sort of graduated from school and want to know where to go from here. The first image I have is, I look over this way sometimes because I have a big screen over here, just so you know, I'm not snubbing you. If I look directly in the camera, I'm looking like this, but I like to see the big screen. That's why my head goes over in this direction. Anyway, this is a part of a suite of 5 miniatures from a suite called The End of the Kali Yuga. And it was shown at the India Art Fair this past year. It was very popular, and I want to call your attention to this little character in the lower left. And this character is, of course, how do I make this go down? Oh, here we go. The Monopoly Man. And the Monopoly Man, of course, represents capitalism. If you ever played the American game Monopoly, you know the game is about gathering as much money as you can. The rich get richer, the poor get poorer. That's the way it seems to work in the world. And I bring him up first because when I talk to young students who have just come out of school, and I'm going to admit right away, I never went to a fine arts school. I didn't go to an art school at all. I went to a college and I studied literature and I studied creative writing. Later, I went to a place called the Milwaukee Center for Photography, where I studied photography, of course. And then I went to a place called Studio Marangoni, the Center for Contemporary Photography in Florence, Italy, and continued my studies there. So basically, I'm a photographer and a bit of a writer. That's where I'm coming from. But whenever I talk to young students, they have these ideas, and I'm just going through them. And I think they're rather negative ideas. You can substitute capitalism. If you don't like that word, you can substitute it with materialism or money. And it's like young artists have to get over these feelings. Another thing young artists often think is do your own thing, because they've been encouraged to do that all through school. Do your own thing, explore, create, try this, try that. Be as creative as you possibly can. All good stuff. It's all very, very good stuff to do when you're in art school. But when you get out of art school, you find you have to focus. You have to focus. You have to find a direction, and you have to start developing some tactics like in a battle, as to how you are going to achieve your goals. So just continuing to do your own thing is not necessarily a good thing to do. The other thing many young people suffer under is the delusion that the best artists suffer. And that's a nice thing that people tell themselves when they're not very successful. They say, well, the best artists suffer, like Van Gogh, you know, who cut off his ear here in the picture. True, many of the best artists do suffer, and it's very sad that that's the case. But I would like to make the case they don't have to. Much of the suffering that happens is because they don't know how to play the game. And this is what I'm here to talk about a little bit, is how to play the game, so that I'm assuming you want to be successful in some way or another. Another thing young artists come out is you must stand with the people. You must reflect your times and stand with the people. Well, that's all a very good sentiment, but maybe in your own art, maybe you don't want to reflect the times. Maybe you want to indulge in the world of fantasy. Maybe you want to indulge in pure abstraction. Maybe you want to indulge in a new novel approach to landscape. You don't necessarily have to reflect the times. And you know, when you stand with the people, it makes you part of a crowd. And part of becoming a successful artist is actually separating yourself from the crowd. You know, that's a controversial statement, but you're separating yourself from the crowd, and you're trying to make the case that you and your art is important enough to be noticed outside of that crowd. So anyway, I think all those above notions that many kids have when they come out of art school, I think that they're negative. They lead, it's as I put, a recipe for an impoverished, crazy life. But you'll notice I've illustrated this with a lino cut by Chitraprasad Bhattacharya. And so here you get into this whole other aspect, which is activist art. Now, activist art is sort of the counter to the materialist capitalist art. So activist art can do a whole different thing. Now, so I use Chitraprasad as an example. And Chitraprasad, as you know, I mean, he worked in Bengal shortly after and during the Bengali famine. He was very, very struck by this. He was also a photojournalist and a journalist. And he made these beautiful lino cuts that were all, nearly all of them were protest lino cuts against the class structure that caused this inequity. Okay. He's very well known today. He was known during his time as an activist artist, but it wasn't until, I will argue, it wasn't until Ashish Anand and Delhi Art Gallery grabbed onto the large portfolios of Chitraprasad's and saw in them the historical value, the cultural value, the significance of this art to India's history. And Ashish Anand then promoted their value as cultural artifacts, that they attained a monetary value that now people will pay quite a bit of money for some of these. So this is a long-winded introduction, but anyway, yes, we're deciding whether or not we want to play the game and how we're going to play it. Are you going to go the activist route? Are you going to go the more materialism route? Do you want to make money? I would argue that no matter which way you go, you have to be concerned about making money, and artists don't like to think about money. I don't like to think about money. I hate it. I hate it when I have to do my taxes. I hate it when I have to account to my accountant. Hate it when I have to pay my GST, all of that stuff. I hate it when I'm running short of money and I don't know where I'm going to get money for the materials I need. I mean, I go through this too, just like many artists. But thinking about money is so necessary to survive in this world as it's structured. Unless you're living in a place like North Korea, if you're living in a place like North Korea, you may not have to worry about money because everything's provided, but you also don't have the freedom to express yourself as you might wish to express yourself. So you've got to make the choice which way you're going to go. And most of this talk is about the more materialism aspect of creating value for your art, though I will get back to the activism element as well. Here's another Chitraprasad, shows Chitraprasad working in his hut in Bengal, sitting on the floor, probably by the light of an oil lamp, working on a lino cut. It's a very powerful self-portrait. To me, this tells you what and who Chitraprasad was, you know, in one image. But I want to get into the whole idea of what is an artist, because if we're going to talk about artists, we have to know what is an artist. What is an artist? I'm going to give you a very cold-hearted definition that's going to make many people hate me right away, but this is a cold-hearted definition, then we'll proceed from there. An artist is a person who wants to do exactly what they want to do, when they want to do it, and expects society to support them for that. Now that sounds insulting and it can be hurtful, and I know that, but think about it. Everybody you deal with in your life, the plumber, the electrician, the Wi-Fi man. My Wi-Fi man came in today to help me fix my Wi-Fi so I could give this presentation. They give you services or they give you products for a certain amount of money, and those services have value and use to you in your day-to-day life. You know, a plumber just doesn't come in, knock on your door and say, oh, I feel like putting a bathtub in the middle of your living room, and expect you to just let him put a bathtub in the middle of your living room and then expect you to pay for that. It doesn't work that way. We commission people to do specific tasks. Artists are the rarity. Artists have a very difficult time because an artist is a person who wants to do exactly what they want to do, when they want to do it, and expect society to support them for that. Now, here's a much more gentle and more explanatory definition of an artist. If I can get to the next thing. This is much nicer. An artist, through the skill of visual communication, connects with people in a manner that moves, inspires, stimulates, shames, and entertains them to such a degree that they are willing to pay for it. And I want you to think about Bollywood. Think about Hollywood, Bollywood movies, Korean movies, whatever. They inspire you. They stimulate you. An action movie stimulates you. They might shame you. They might shame you that these poor people are starving on the streets and you're a relatively wealthy person or middle class, solidly middle class. You don't have to deal with the struggles of a street kid. So movies can shame you. And they certainly entertain you. You walk out of a movie talking with your friends saying, wow, that was really good. Why do you say it was really good? It's partially the cinematography and the acting, but the movie has affected your heart in some way and it's affected your brain in some way. And you are willing to pay for that transformation. Okay? So that, I think, is the true nature of what art is. And you have to ask yourself, how does your own art as a visual art, how will it inspire, stimulate, shame, entertain to such a degree that people will be willing to pay for it? It's a very difficult task to do. That's why so many artists do not succeed. So you want to play the game. To me, the game's like snakes and ladders. You know, you can hit ladders that take you up in the art world. You can hit a snake that's going to take you down. And we've all seen this in the art world. We've seen artists in India, I know, rise to fame very quickly. I've been here 20 years, I know. Artists rise to fame very quickly. I tend not want to give names, but I will. Gopi Krishna. Gopi Krishna shot up in popularity before 2008, and his works became extremely valuable. Then all of a sudden there was an auction. A lot of people dumped his work. His value went down, and Gopi Krishna now, his paintings are worth a lot less than what they were in 2008. It's tragic because I think he's a wonderful artist. So it's a game that you're always playing. You never reach a pinnacle where you're just there and you can't fall. You can always fall. Maybe this talk will make me fall. I don't know. Here we go. So the first thing I would do if you're a young artist is take a long, hard look at your own art. Be aware of your own art and ask yourself these questions. Does it have honest meaning? Does your art have honest meaning? Do you really have something to say? Could be social, could be political, could be purely visual, that you're saying, oh, look, the visual arts could go in this direction and it's never gone in this direction before, and I'm going to take it in this direction, such as the Cubists did. Ask yourself, have you made it with your best skill? You yourself know if the artwork you've made is really your best work. You yourself know, this is amazing. I made a beautiful thing and it's absolutely perfect. It's the best I can make it. And other times, you know, well, this isn't the best, but maybe it'll slide by and maybe somebody will buy it. Be honest with yourself. Look at your own art. Ask yourself, is it truly unique or just recycled mediocre? Is your art truly something unique that's going to, once again, coming back to stand out in the crowd, be special, be something that's going to catch people's eyes and move them in a very special way, not like every other piece of art that's hanging in the group show? How does your art separate you from the crowd? Kind of goes in with the one above. How is your art unique? And also, do you see a direction that your art will progress? And I think this is very important. You have to know, okay, this is where my art came from. This is where it is now. And this is where I see it in the future. You have to have a sense of direction, a pathway that your art is following. And you should be very consciously thinking about these things if you're going to succeed. So being an artist is a constant battle, often unrewarded and filled with daily challenges. Are you willing to commit to that? And the daily challenges never end. There's no such thing. In fact, the more famous or the more successful you get, the more challenges you encounter. You get more and more people pulling on you, asking you for this, asking you for that. You get more and more busy. You start reaching the point where you have to hire assistants and everything else just to do what you want to do. The challenges never end. The battle never ends. It's something always being fought. Then, after all I've said that, okay, I want to just say good art will sell itself. Good art will sell itself. If you do really phenomenal art, it will sell itself, but only if it is exposed. And the big thing is to get that exposure so that people will see the good art that you are making and be moved by it and want to talk about it and minimal talk about it, maybe write about it in a newspaper, and hopefully somebody will want to buy it. So art residencies, I have to talk about this because many students, when they get out of college, one of the first things they do is they apply for art residencies. I think art residencies are a great thing. I've been to a couple myself. Art residencies are a great way to meet other artists, to make connections, to improve your skills, to learn new techniques. And I know there's a great deal of competition applying for art residencies. I think when you're out of college, you should definitely try to do an art residency. I know an artist now, I mean, Ketaki Satapur is in, I think, somewhere in Scandinavia. Maripelli Praveen is in the US, I believe, on art residencies. Abul Hisham is in the Netherlands at the, how do you say it, the Rijksmuseum or whatever. So residencies are great and they look great on your resume if you do them. But I also think residencies can be a trap in that I meet artists sometimes who are, you know, they've been graduated from college for 6 years and they're still on this residency circuit. And residency circuit is great because you get to travel. Many of them will pay your way, you know, whatever, especially to Europe or the US, the Western countries. If you're unfortunate enough to be in Europe and, you know, a European, there aren't so many opportunities in Asia that way, but there are opportunities for Asians to go to Europe and the West in our current political situation. So, you know, I would do them, but don't get so focused on them that that becomes your entire life. You have to move beyond the art residency, I feel. This photo with Mitu Sen, Dibin Talekin, and Abul Hisham, two Carolyn artists, and of course Mitu. This was done at an artist residency that Rajesh Soni and I did in Chennai years ago. And it was an interesting experience for me. There weren't that many artists actually producing art, and Sanjay Tulsin, who was running the residency, kept encouraging us to just see Chennai, go to the galleries, meet the curators. He wanted it to be an experience where we all learned about Chennai's art scene, which was wonderful, but I was a little disappointed because there weren't that many people actually working on their art, but there were some very good artists there, international artists and big name Indian artists, and some very good symposiums. It was well worth it. This photo was taken in the parking lot of the Taj Hotel where we were all put up. And so these big leaves are actually in a planter in the parking lot, and Mitu was gracious enough to come and pose, and I got Dibin and Abul to pose as the jungly boys in the jungle, and I was on top of this big step ladder taking the photograph. So, but through this, I met Mitu. I became closer to Mitu. You know, you go to a residency, you meet people, you become friends with them, doors will open. Maybe somebody has a gallery, or, you know, going back to this one, if you're in a residency in Europe, maybe one of these guys or girls, you know, are connected with the gallery. Maybe they'll give you an introduction. You know, residencies are a good thing. And this is that photo of Mitu Sen. It ended up at Alliance Francaise in New Delhi in a show I had called May Be Removed at Will. The show got largely panned. I didn't get good reviews on this show. Johnny M.L. wrote a review that said, Waswo X Waswo may remove this show exhibition at will. He was saying, you know, it was just like, just get rid of it. I personally liked it, you know, which was the important thing. And but I put this photo in there because it's about rental spaces. Alliance Francaise is basically a rental space. You had to pay a fee to use it, and you had to get permission from the director, you know, to give an exhibition, give him a proposal, blah, 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 and be accepted. And this was actually the culmination of a touring exhibition that we had called India Poems, which is part of my personal story, which we'll get back to later, is how I made my name in India. So let's continue. This jumps around a little bit. It's not in complete chronological order. This is another view of that exhibition at Alliance Francaise. I was actually being critical, and I think this is important for artists to do. Be critical of your own work and look back at it a few years in the future and look back at your old work and think, what was I doing? You know, so when I exhibited these sepia-toned chemical process prints, they were all pictorialist, shot with a Rolleiflex camera. I got a lot of criticism for being Orientalist in some way or another, or having a white gaze. So in this show, we put a acrylic overlay to all the photographs in the frame with an etched word. So here we have the landscape with the monkey, which was shot at the Hanuman temple in Hampi. And I put the words unending with a space, implying that, well, it is ending because of the environmental degradation, whatever. And that's where the title "May Be Removed at Will" came from. It was like, if you bought one of these, you could keep the words on it, or you could remove it and just keep the photograph. That was up to you. You can remove the words in your mind, okay, as well. We also made these big stacks of boxes with Yes water bottles, which had become famous in our miniature paintings. Okay, you're gonna laugh at this. Now we're going way back. This is from one of my very first exhibitions, if not my first exhibition. This was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where I was from. This is me sitting in the middle, believe it or not. Milwaukee is a town that produces Harley-Davidson motorcycles, thus the motorcycle gear and beer. And at that time, I was doing spray paintings. I was a spray painter, believe it or not, at one time. I never liked to call myself a graffiti artist because I made my spray paintings on canvases and on paper and framed them up. But I made this invitation, and it was a cooperative gallery. Talk about cooperative galleries for a while. Okay, you don't have a gallery. You can get a group of artists together, form a cooperative, find a space, rent it out. Everybody's responsible for kicking in a share of the rent. With Gallery 218, this cooperative gallery, you had to pay a yearly fee to belong. And if you exhibited a work, there was a fee for exhibiting a work in a show. They did try to curate them to some extent. They always had thematic shows of one sort or another. And if you had a solo like I did, you had to pay quite a bit of money to rent out the whole gallery. So I rented out the whole gallery and I had this exhibition. Now in the invitation, I did not put any of my work. And that was very purposeful because I didn't want people to see the work until they came into the gallery. I wanted them to be surprised when they walked in. So I sat myself against the wall surrounded by these aerosol cans, and I have my signature up here, which we'll talk about later because this signature is absolutely horrible. Nobody should have a horrible, ugly signature like this. But that's the way I was signing my work at the time. I grew from that, thank goodness. But anyway, a man whose name was Curtis Carter, who is the director of the Haggerty Museum of Art at Marquette University in Milwaukee, he saw this invitation and he came to the opening. The director of the museum came to the opening to check out what was going to be on the walls because his curiosity had been aroused. He didn't know what it was going to be. And Curtis Carter was friends with Keith Haring in the early days. Keith Haring, the artist from New York, who you all know was the graffiti artist who was circulating at the time, same time as Jean-Michel Basquiat. So Keith Haring, Curtis Carter actually invited to Milwaukee to decorate the boards that surrounded the construction site of the new Haggerty Museum of Art. So because he had this connection with Keith Haring, he was interested in my invitation with the spray bottles, with the spray cans. He wanted to come and see what was there. It was very fortunate because we talked and we became, I wouldn't say friends, but we got to know each other a little bit, and he remembered me. So in the future, I had an exhibition at the Haggerty Museum of Art. Now this is jumping, several years. I think this was 2007. And that show with the spray cans was in the 1990s, okay? But he remembered me. And after I traveled India a bit and I had done these sepia tone chemical process prints, I approached him. I made an appointment to see him at the museum, and I showed him my photographs. I explained to him that I had traveled India with these to various places, and I thought that they were worth having an exhibition in Milwaukee. And the Haggerty Museum was divided into two levels. So the lower levels had like the Picassos and the Salvador Dalis and, all the big name artists. And the top level was devoted to regional Wisconsin artists. Now, museums don't do this so much anymore, but they did at that time. So he selected me for an exhibition in the top gallery as a Wisconsin artist for 1 month, in the month of September of 2007. And that became my first museum show. So in an odd way, this goofy invitation, which looks so amateurish and silly, led to this. And that's why I say you never know. You have to get yourself out there because you never know who you're going to meet and you never know where it's going to lead you. Okay, we talked about my signature. I hate going back to this invitation, but I just found it online and I'm rather enthralled by it, actually. Look how ugly my signature is. And now look at my signature. This is the signature from the print sale we're having starting tomorrow, actually. The signature has changed. I changed my name to Waswo X Waswo. Why did I do that? I have a lot of philosophical reasons why I did that, and I can get into a 45-minute talk about the change of my name. But one of the main reasons, name recognition. Nobody remembered the name Waswo, but everybody remembers the name Waswo X Waswo. So I became Waswo X Waswo in 2001. After the 1990s, I changed my name to Waswo X Waswo. And my signature changed. It's become a much more graceful, beautiful signature. Nothing turns me off more as a collector when I'm looking like buying like prints. Might have a beautiful print, but if the artist signs it in a klutzy bad way, it's like it's a turnoff. It's like you should have a beautiful signature, be it in English or in Hindi or in Telugu or any other Bengali. It has to be a beautiful signature. I think that is something artists need to learn and perfect. Also, I learned to emboss all my photographs. I don't know if you can see the embossing in the painting here. All my photographs now and any of my art has an embossed stamp that says WXW, which is like the authentication stamp that says this is an original artwork by Waswo X Waswo and team. And I always got to mention my team because I can't do it without those guys. Location, location, location. This is a realtor saying. Realtors, you say, what are the three things that are most important while buying a property? And realtors will say location, location, location. You can have a beautiful home, but if it's in a bad part of town that nobody wants to live in, it's going to be valued less than if you have a mediocre home in a very expensive, rich part of town. It's going to be valued more, even if it's less of a house. Now, I'm not saying your art's going to be valued more if you live in Delhi or Mumbai, but if you switch your geography to a place where you meet the right people, if you're hiding out in some small town, if you're hiding out in a place that's not known as being an art center, you're going to have a much more difficult time making connections and fitting into the scene. So think about shifting your location if you're in one of those places. I live in Udaipur. Somebody's going to call me and they say, well, you live in Udaipur. What's Udaipur? Udaipur is a small little town in Rajasthan. True. But the thing about Udaipur is absolutely beautiful. Udaipur is a destination for people all over the world. Udaipur is small, and because it's small, you meet a lot of people, and there's a lot of very important people who come here. And all the people who live in Udaipur have all these stories, like of the tailor, who was Monish Paliwal, who was walking across the Chandpol Bridge. He was stopped on top of the Chandpol Bridge by a man who said, "You're very handsome, you should be a model." And Monish was like, "Me?" And the guy said, "Yeah, I would like you to model some of my clothes. I'm a designer." Well, Monish ended up modeling clothes for Giorgio Armani, and he appeared in Paris Vogue and Tokyo Vogue. Happened in Udaipur on the Chandpol Bridge, that connection. Okay, that's one reason I live in Udaipur. I'm being very honest. Udaipur is a great place to meet people because a lot of people in the arts, in design, whatever, people who are attracted to beauty move through Udaipur. If they come through Udaipur, if they've heard of me at all, they will hunt me down and see me. And I get to talk to some very interesting people who pass through town. Okay, some of my own story. So I was this Milwaukee boy, doing spray paintings. I came to India and I had my new background in photography. I decided photography was my thing. I went to Kashi Art Cafe in Kochi, and I talked to Dorian Anoop, Dory Younger and Anoop Skaria, who were running the cafe at the time. At that time, the cafe was in the back and the gallery was in the front. And their policy at the time was that they only showed Indian artists. They did not show any foreigners, except for 1 month of the year. 1 month of the year, they would show a foreign artist. And I said, "Oh, I want to be that foreign artist. Next year, I want to be the one." I think this was 2000 or 2001. I showed my photographs to both Dory and Anoop. Dory loved them right away. She said, "These are great." Anoop took one look at them and sort of pushed them away and said, "This is exactly the type of photography I hate." So I had a very negative reaction from Anoop, though Anoop became a good friend later. And they had a little parley between them, and Dory convinced Anoop that I should be able to show. Convinced him that maybe they weren't as Orientalist as his knee-jerk reaction was. We had the exhibition. At that time, I always opened the exhibitions with a poetry reading. That's why I'm sitting down with this tabla player. So I would read poetry, somebody would play the tabla, and that would be the inauguration of the exhibition, my poetry reading. And the show sold. Now, it mostly sold to tourists. It sold to foreigners. I mean, our first buyers in India were foreigners, but it sold. I mean, the photographs at that time were priced at like 20,000 rupees. They were really cheap compared to our prices today, but we sold. So everybody was happy. And this exhibition then continued on. I don't want to get ahead of myself. I met a man in Goa named Rajan Fulari, who was introduced to me by his cousin Pandurang Pingi. And Rajan Fulari put me on the back of his bike and said, "Well, you should get connected with Alliance Francaise." And he took me to the Alliance Francaise de Goa. I met the director, a lovely woman, and she said, "Sure, have a show here, let's plan it." So I ended up having a show at the Alliance Francaise in Goa. Then I was put in contact with the director of the Alliance Francaise in Bangalore. I had a show at the Alliance Francaise in Bangalore. Pretty soon I was having a show at the Alliance Francaise in Colombo in Sri Lanka. Then I was having a show at the Alliance Francaise in Kandy in Sri Lanka. None of these were beautiful spaces, but they were exhibition spaces and people came. We had the first secretary from the American Embassy come to the one in Colombo. In Bangalore, I met people like Prasad Bidappa and different people, the fashion designer, Prasad Bidappa. So once again, connections were being made. I was being invited to people's homes, meeting people who had money, meeting people who had who were collectors and had collections. So it started to take off, and eventually it became a book through Binasagar Elias, but I don't want to go through that whole story. But this is the way I started. And in those days, I traveled with an assistant named Shrinu, and Shrinu was from Hampi, from South India. I was so paranoid about my photographs getting scratched because, a silver gelatin print you spend a day or two making. and not like a digital photograph where you have a file and you just print it out on a printer. I was so afraid of them being scratched that we always unframed our photographs after each exhibition. And I had slipped them in plastic sleeves with archival backing. And then we'd pack them in a suitcase and we'd ship the frames to the next venue. Then we'd reframe them all again. I mean, this was the procedure. It sounds crazy now, I know, totally crazy, but I was very paranoid about my photographs getting lost or destroyed or scratched, whatever. So we put tremendous amount of work. I remember being in Colombo and suddenly they needed invitations for the show in Kandy. And last minute, I had to run up to Kandy on the train just to deliver the invitations, then go back to Colombo because the actual show wasn't for a couple days. But these are all stories to be told. Anyway, I changed, and as you know, I started doing the hand-colored digital prints with these two guys, Roger Sony in the red shirt, who's no longer with me. He stopped working with me this year in January after many, many years of collaboration. He decided he wanted to go off on his own. And RVJ, who's in the back, very young RVJ, has also worked with me for years and years. This year in March, he decided to go off on his own and start his own journey. I give him my blessings, go ahead, do it. I mean, because now my Carcana, my workshop has grown so much that I can do it without them, and they have every right to develop their own careers. They don't have to be chained to my name, which I think was the problem. So we had this show in Kochi in Matt and Cherry. I'm sorry I don't have photos of these, but Dorian Anoop had opened a very large space in Matt and Cherry. And we had a huge exhibition. That was the first time that the photos and the miniatures were shown together at the same time. And they had an agreement with Palette Art Gallery to send this exhibition up to Palette Art Gallery in New Delhi. And I would say this show at Palette Art Gallery is the show that put me on the map. You know, Dory had a lot to do with it, but the show at Palette Art Gallery was swamped at the opening. All the curators came out. Kavita Singh came. You know, you can say Uma Nair here. You can see Gigi Scaria, George Martin. You know, the fashion crowd came out. It was a beautiful display. Rohit and Rahul do a beautiful job of display at Palette. We sold a lot. We sold like nearly everything out. And we felt like we had arrived in some sense after the Palette Art Gallery show. So this is the way it works. Some of it is luck, a lot of it is hard work. You've got to put yourself out there working hard. I mean, I can't tell you how much sweat I put into these things in the early days. Here you can see the photographs on display in these very large, thick black teak frames we had made. And I'm forgetting who these guys are, but you probably recognize who they are, but I'm forgetting. I think one is Rameshwar Bruta, I think, but I might be confused. Anyway, it was a good show. I'm losing track of the time. I'm going to have to speed up a little bit here. Next, we had a show in Bangkok at a gallery called Serindia Gallery in Bangkok. This exhibition happened because I keep a little apartment in Bangkok these days because India only lets me stay here a certain number of months of the year. When I'm not allowed in India, I have to go somewhere. So I go to my apartment in Thailand, in Bangkok. And Chandra Mohun, the woodcut printmaker from Baroda, was having an exhibition that Siddharth Shaw, I believe, curated at Serindia Gallery, Bangkok. And I went down to see the woodcut exhibition because I really love prints, as many people know, and I was collecting prints. And I met the owner of the gallery, whose name was Shane Suvikapa Kornkol. He's Thai Chinese, his real name is Chen, but he Americanized it to Shane. And it turned out that he had spent a lot of time studying in Chicago. He was very aware of Milwaukee, where I was from. We kind of hit it off right away together. I told him I was a photographer. I told him we were now doing hand-colored photographs. He said, "Oh, do you have any? Let me see." So I ran back to my apartment. I had a tube. I had like maybe 3 hand-colored photographs, brought the tube down, showed him, and he got all excited. He said, "Oh, I want to have a show of these. I want to have a show." So we ended up having a show called Men of Rajasthan. The title was Shane's idea. The opening was swamped. Once again, we almost sold out. Very, very lucky show for us. I brought Ganpat and a couple other people. Rajesh was not at this show, but Rajesh did attend other shows in Bangkok later on. And Shane put out this book, which was the catalog, The Men of Rajasthan. It was a paperback, but it was a thick paperback. The photos weren't reproduced very well. They were rather faded looking, but it was a very nice book. I was very happy with it. And years later, I went back to him and said, I want to do this book in hardcover. Shane totally paid for this first book on his own because he had such confidence in me. But the hardcover, he decided that I should kick in half sort of to get this to press. So it was sort of a half-half mutual publication of Men of Rajasthan in hardcover. And we added some more photographs and some more essays and some other things to make it special. So this is my growth as an artist. Asia was very good to me, and this goes to the location. Sometimes if you change location, magical things happen. So I was getting sort of a name for myself, and all of a sudden I got a call from Renu Modi from Gallery Espace. I was very surprised, and she said she had talked with her team and she wanted to know if I would like to be represented by Gallery Espace in Delhi. I was very excited. I never had a gallery call me before. I was always chasing galleries. Gallery actually called me, and I called up a few people. I think I called Manjunath Kamath and Gigi Scari, and I said, like, they represent you. Is this a good idea? Should I do this? And they were very encouraging. They said, yes, yes, great gallery. It's going up now. They're doing some fun things, like join. Renu's a good person. So I joined Gallery Espace. I'm with them to this day. This is selections of photographs from the opening exhibitions of our first show at Gallery Espace called Confessions of an Evil Orientalist. I was always responding in my art to the criticisms that I got from those early sepia-toned photographs. And I mean, that was partially how the miniatures developed, of course, too, because the miniatures were a response to the criticism of the photographs. But Gallery Espace is still my gallery to this day. Plus now we've expanded, as Satyajit said, to Latitude 28 and most recently Gallery Isa in Mumbai. For that show, we created a comic book. I took selections of scans from the different miniatures and I made text bubbles for them. And I made a little story out of our miniatures. And at the opening, I handed these out for free. I didn't charge anything, they were free. So everybody who attended that opening got a copy of the comic book, The Evil Orientalist, which was kind of a funny thing. You read here, it's like, I'm saying, what is that thing in my bed? Some kind of lizard. Last night, there was a cockroach. I should talk to the manager. I'm being the typical evil tourist complaining about everything. And then I'm saying that this place is so uncivilized. So I'm very much being the evil foreigner orientalist. But, you know, people like the fact that I think partially I succeeded because I wasn't trying to say, this is India, because Indians don't like that. Indians want to tell their own story. They don't want foreigners to tell their story for them. They want to tell their story. So my approach was always, I want to tell my story, my reactions to India, and I do it in sort of a self-deprecating way where I sort of put myself down in ways, you know, in my art, you know, I make myself a comical character. And people relate to that. It's much more approachable. People can approach my art in a more easy way that way. So anyway, going back to rising in the art world, and this is something you will learn. As you gain connections, you will lose friends. And I mean, I'm just speaking truly. As you start moving up and you start gaining some success and getting some good galleries and having some sellout shows, your old friends from school, your batchmates, are going to get jealous if they're not on the same trajectory. And they might think you a snob. You might think you've moved beyond them. sometimes you have to make separations and realize I'm just not at the same level of these people. This happened to me with the people back in Milwaukee. On my Facebook feed, I only have one group of people, a gay couple, who are still friends with me from Milwaukee because they kind of know what to say and what not to say. Because when I first went on Facebook, I let all my Milwaukee friends on, and they were just saying stupid, embarrassing things like, are there tigers in Udaipur, or is it really dirty where you live? And, these typical comments that Westerners can make that living in India, I'm embarrassed about. It's like, oh God, how can people be writing this on my feed? So I ended up blocking a whole bunch of my old friends from Milwaukee because I couldn't have them making comments like that on my social media feeds. So you have to be willing to lose friends as you move up, because if you don't do that, I've met young printmakers come and meet me. I'm very impressed with them as a young printmaker. And then they bring along like 4 of their batchmates from their class, and they're dressed slovenly and they're half drunk and they make a horrible impression. And I think, why are you bringing these people along? Move ahead. You're smart. You're ambitious. You've got it in you to do something great. You don't have to bring the people along with you. You can do it on your own. And that's the only way to do it. So common mistakes young artists make. I just wanted to make a list. Assuming that the camaraderie of school days continues into the real art world, it does not. You're going to have some good friends from your school days you're going to always be in contact with. You're moving up at the same level at the same time, or you just really like each other and you're always going to be in contact with, but you're not necessarily going to stay friends with all the people that you were in school. You have to be willing to break bonds. Not being business minded. And this, I can tell a little story. So you have to be business minded. So I'm going to mention another name. I really like her, Sogra Kurasani. She's a wonderful printmaker, lives in Baroda. She called me one night and she said, Chacha, I really want to make a big press, buy or make a big press for pressing my woodcut prints because I'm tired of spooning them. I need a big press. And she asked me to loan her about 2.5 lakh. And I was like, Sogra, I don't have that money to give away now. I'm struggling as it is, just keeping the people who work for me, employed. And I said, here's an idea. Think about it from a business perspective. Why don't you talk to your gallery TARC and tell them you want the new press? And then don't ask for the money. Say, I'm going to make a portfolio, a limited edition of 5 only. And in each portfolio, there will be, 4 or 5 prints, something like that. And this portfolio will sell for 50,000 rupees. And then you find 5 collectors, which I know Sogra has at least 5 collectors. And each collector will then commit to buying the portfolio at 50,000 rupees, which will total 2.5 lakh to give you the money to buy your new press. It's a much more business way of approaching it rather than just calling somebody and asking them to give you a loan or give you some money or blah, blah, blah. No, you can approach it in a way that sounds very professional. Being business-minded is important. I think Subrat Behera with Litholeka is quite business-minded in the way he's handling that studio. Many artists are. You have to give them credit when they're business-minded. The business-minded artists are the ones who will go up the best. And that's kind of sad because sometimes the really talented artists who make beautiful art, they don't go anywhere. And I know artists who are just brilliant, brilliant artists, but nobody knows who they are. And they kind of suffer in obscurity because they haven't learned to play the game. And you have to learn to play the game. Otherwise, you're going to be a brilliant artist, a Van Gogh. And unless you have a brother like Theo, who's going to promote you, and somebody who's going to buy your body of work and promote you after your death, you're going to disappear. I'm being very opinionated here, but that's the way I am. I'm sorry. Approaching curators and galleries before you are ready. I think a lot of artists approach curators and galleries before they're really ready to. I think you have to be very confident about your own work. You have to know what you are promoting to the curators and the galleries, and you have to be able to articulate it in a very good way. Just because you've graduated from school and you have some work around, don't go running to a gallery and show them the work. No, galleries want to see that you have a direction, you have a trajectory, that you're committed, and I'll get this a little later, but not knowing the value of your own work, nothing drives me more crazy than when I ask young artists, how much are you selling this for? And they kind of hem and haw, I don't know. Let me think about it. I'll get back to you, blah, blah, blah. I feel you should always know the value of what you are selling, the value. You know how much time you put into it. You know how much the materials were. You know where your status is in the art community or where you want it to be. You should be able to value your own work. And if you can't value your own work, then talk to somebody who works for a gallery or something to help you value it. But you should know the value of your own work. You should appreciate your own work. Don't charge too little. Don't charge too much. Charge the right price. But you have to know that, because when you're asked, how much does this cost? You need to have an answer. You can't hem and haw, because if somebody hems and haws with me and does I'll let you know how much it is in 3 days, by that time I lose interest, and many collectors will. Being unable to explain your work being unable to explain why your work ought to be valued. You have to be able, going back to that first thing I said, you're doing exactly what you want, how you want to do it, and you expect to be paid for it. You have to be able to explain, why should you be paid for this work that you've done? How do you explain the value that this work has to the person buying it or the society at large? You have to be able to explain it in some manner, and you have to be prepared for that. Not selling yourself as an entire package. I see very good artists, they approach galleries and they think only the work is going to sell itself. Well, I tell you something, galleries look at everything. How do you present yourself? How are you dressed? Are you confident? Do you hold yourself up straight? Do you have an idea, a vision of where you're going with your art? Can you articulate that in whatever language? Doesn't have to be English, but can you articulate your vision of where you want to be? Can you articulate why you think you'll be a good fit with the gallery? You have to be able to sell the entirety of who you are to a gallery or a curator. I think we only have one slide left here. I forgot to say a few things. Oh, that it? No, okay, we missed one. Overselling victimhood. I was hesitant to put this in, but it's very fashionable now to always say, well, I'm a Black artist, I'm a lesbian artist, I'm a transsexual artist. It works. I mean, it does work, especially for curators and gallerists in the West who are currently going through a lot of self-guilt and a lot of self-examination. It might be your ticket to get yourself a gallery show or into a gallery show in Europe. I don't think it's going to last much longer, and I certainly don't think it works very well in India. I don't think you should sell yourself as a victim. You have to word it in a different manner. You might say that your work is concerned about certain social issues, but don't imply that you're a victim. I mean, there are certain people I meet at openings in Delhi, and they drive everybody crazy because all they are is full of sob stories. You say, oh, hi, how are you? I haven't seen you for a long time. And the first thing you hear is, well, I still don't know how to pay my rent, and nothing sells, and the whole game is rigged. It sounds like Donald Trump, like the whole game is rigged, and, blah, blah, blah. It's not a way to win friends. It's not a way to move up. You have to be positive. When you meet somebody, you should say all the positive things that have happened to you lately. If somebody meets me today, I'll say I just got back from a writer's retreat in Sri Lanka, which I did. I spent a month there at a beautiful old Sri Lankan home. I had my own little forest house. I was working on a new book. We're currently working towards the print sale. We're currently working towards a show at Gallery Isa next year. You may not have those things to say, but certainly there's something positive in your life that you can present to give people the feeling that you're coming from a positive place and you hope to go to a positive place, because nobody likes to listen to a whiner. Don't be a whiner, basically, is what I'm saying. Failing to express yourself in words. Okay, that I sort of covered that. Failing to make use of assistants and collaborators. As you start moving up, you might need assistants and collaborators. Subrat Behar at Litholeka, he's not making all of his lithographs on his own anymore. He has people come in, young students. They want to learn how to make lithographs like Subrat. I honestly think Subrat Behar is one of the best lithographers in the country right now. He is exceedingly knowledgeable about the process of lithography. So people want to work with him. They want to work and they want to learn. Make use of that. You know, you need assistance to help you. I cannot get by. I can't do anything. I can't do anything without my collaborators. I'll say it right now. I mean, like Chirag, I'll name them. Chirag Kumawat, his father, Shankar Kumawat, Dalpat Jinger, his brother, Bunty Jinger. I can't do anything without those guys. Those guys have the talent to create what I envision, and they have the talent to put that down on paper. So without them, I'm nothing. I need those guys tremendously. And I'm so thankful that they appreciate me. And I try to pay them well. I try to give them always credit. I give them bonuses. So you have to work with your assistants in different ways, but with my collaborators, it becomes like a family. I want to feel that my collaborators are like a family. We're a close team and we're working for a goal together that we're all going to enjoy the result. We're all going to go to the India Art Fair together, like we did this last year, wearing the same straw hat and have fun at it and have a party and see our solo booth and really have a good time. You know, the collaborators are part of it. And sometimes my galleries don't like that. They say, oh, keep your collaborators at home. You just be the star, Waswell. You be the star. It's like, I can't be the star unless I have my collaborators. My collaborators have to be there. So, you know, you have to fight for a lot of different things. Failing to understand the importance of good associations. Yes, you have to understand the importance of associating with the right people, not the wrong people. I missed one. Failing to evolve in an understandable fashion. Your artwork should not get stuck in a niche like M.F. Hussein, who at the end was just producing horses, 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 like the Patti Smith song, horses, horses, horses. Hussein was brilliant. He was brilliant in his early age. As he got older, when he started just reproducing these horse paintings again and again, it's like, oh, it's so boring. I mean, to me, those paintings have very little value, honestly, though they sell for 1 crore of rupees. But if you don't evolve as an artist, people lose interest in you. But if you make too radical of a leap, people won't follow you. They'll be like, well, how could you be doing this last year? Now you're doing this totally different thing this year. You have to have some sort of continuity between, you know, what you were doing, where you came from, what you're doing now, and where you're going in the future. It has to evolve, but it has to make some logical sense, the way you evolve. The last thing is failing to let go of old friends who have not kept pace. I've covered that already. And then the last thing I didn't talk about at all, maybe because I'm old, but I love it. Social media. Have a social media presence, for God's sake, you know, get out there and post every day, post something. Some people do this wonderfully well. I mean, Navakash makes some really interesting posts on his social media, on his Instagram account, interesting reels about him making art and whatever. They're fun to watch. I don't really respond to his artwork that much, but I respond to the way he promotes it. And it catches me and it makes me watch it. It makes me want to meet him someday. social media has far reach. You post on social media, you all know this, you'll get messages from people all over the world who are interested in what you're doing, and you can respond to them in the way you see fit. So I think social media presence is a must these days. As you become more well-known, you might want to scale it back, because if you're a very top-end artist, maybe using a lot of social media sort of cheapens you. You know, you don't have to do that sort of promotion anymore when you've reached a pinnacle. And my gallerist, Renu, often tells me that, Roswell, you do too much social media. You should just not do all of that. But I enjoy social media. I'm a social person. So that's the end of my talk. I hope it was of some value, and I'll turn this back to Satyajit and we open it up for questions. I hope some people are here still. So how do I end this? Oh, I have to stop share. There we go. So
thank you so much for that, Vasu. It was definitely something that people need to keep in mind, and I hope you've stirred enough things for the audience.
I hope it was a little controversial, and I hope that people will talk about it. So
Yes, Nehal, please go ahead. Just a second, I'll allow you to mute yourself. Just a second. Unmute. Yeah, please, Nehal, try again. Try again.
Yeah, I can.
Great.
hi, Nehal.
Hi, Vasu. I don't have any questions as of yet because I don't know how you've managed to cover absolutely everything in one presentation. And I know you don't need this compliment, but this is by far the most well articulated presentation I've ever come across.
Thank you.
A very short, but very well articulated and so informative. And I loved your wit.
I had to condense it a lot because I can go on for 2 hours about this, but I wanted to leave room for
especially
questions.
You said that, when you were explaining about snakes and ladders, and you said that your presentation is, you are definitely going down because of
Well, I would love, Nehal, to actually like teach a class to young students about the art world. I get young artists will message me Facebook Messenger, and they'll just say, hi.
No,
and it's I answer, yeah. like, what do you want? Come to the point, state your business, maybe that's, I'm an American. We have this attitude towards life. Come to the point,
No,
but I'm glad you enjoyed it, Nehal.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, really.
Rohit, please go ahead.
Rohit. Hi, Rohit.
Hi, hello, sir.
How are you?
I'm good. I've seen your work at the Gallery Isa, and it's really first time me hearing you and seeing you at the same time.
Okay.
And I would really congratulate you on this. This is one of the most honest presentation I have ever heard from an artist, which is also telling all the kind of gossipy things, I would say, or like a behind the story which is not easily accessible to the normal crowd or the people who visit the gallery. So that's kind of really puts a good insight and understand how the art world works and really functions, and it kind of makes me to meet you in person someday and really have a good chat about everything and so on. And
thank you
for sharing a lot of insight and your journey.
I wish more artists would just be honest about how they have grown, and like a lot of artists just want to keep it very secret. They want it to be very mysterious, how they became a master artist, in the art world. But to me, it's like we've all went through these things at one point or another in our stage. The biggest artist you can imagine started out as a student, started out as somebody who was like struggling to make his first connection and get noticed. Everybody has gone through it. So I don't see anything wrong with talking about. I came from a very low background. I used to work in a screen printing shop. We were industrial printing. We were printing circuitry for microwave ovens. Did that for 16 years. I can be rather meticulous because I was a quality man. So I was a quality inspector, so I can like see all the little mistakes, with my eyes. But Yeah, I'm not ashamed of that. I mean, that was great. Manual labor is intellectual. It was skilled labor in some ways, and
No, I
talk
really
about
have
it, you know?
a huge respect for this, and once after this, the respect has been just increasing by enormous ways.
Yeah,
After listening your stories and the hardship you faced at some point of time.
yeah.
So
Okay.
thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate.
Thank you, Rohit. Anybody else?
Yes, Matashi, please go ahead.
Hello, am I audible?
Is that
Yes,
Matushi?
yes.
Hi, Matushi. I don't see your face, but you're audible.
Yes, Vasvo, I really enjoyed the session today, and the reason I made it a point to attend it is I wasn't sure if my students would be allowed, so at least I attended because I definitely knew you would come up with some very wise pointers which I can share with my students. I mean, as an artist also, all the years that I have known you, I myself have been greatly benefited, and many others of my time, especially printmakers, because of the support that you had given through your connoisseurship at a time when no gallery was touching prints. And
Right.
yes, you have given us a platform which was unprecedented. Today, there are a lot of galleries who are promoting prints, but I squarely remember it that in a time when nobody was promoting prints, you were there and you have given a huge impetus to this medium. Coming to my question,
Okay.
I have two words. One
Yes.
is product, and the other is labor.
Okay.
That kind of the word labor you have just mentioned. So, regarding honesty, so what you just said, that I really agree with you, that there is a lot of pseudo attitude among Indian artists where they try to make us believe that they have just fallen out of sky and it's a miracle that they are great artists today. But things happen through hard labor, and uh, people shirk away from recognizing that when they are putting a piece of art, it might have a great concept, but end of the day, when you're putting a price tag on it, it is a product. And hard labor is something which needs to be appreciated and always valued. So I just request you to speak a little bit more on these 2 points and how relevant it is in today's time,
Well,
especially in the background of the digital media, AI, and all of this taking up.
no, I don't even want to take a stab at AI. That's way too above me at this point, and I'm not quite sure about anything about AI. But I can say about valuing an artwork. I mean, an artwork is valued with how much labor was put into it, of course. It has to show the labor, has to show the labor. And this is a problem, for somebody like Sabrat. Sabrat has been working on lithos for us for a couple of months, and he sends me videos almost every day about the labor going into making those lithographs. It is unbelievable the number of times he has to grind the stones and re-ink the stones and print just a little bit of color and then go through the whole process again, carrying around these big giant lithographic stones. But when you see the final lithograph, the average person, they don't see that labor, so sometimes your labor needs to be explained to people is one thing I would say. But value generally is attributed to a work of art because a couple things: skill level, how it speaks to society, its historical significance. Historical significance is huge, by the way. The myth of the artist. Why does Basquiat sell so well? Why does Warhol sell so well? Why does M.F. Hussein sell so well? Or F.N. Souza? There is a myth to them. They created a myth about themselves as artists, which makes people want to hold a part of that myth. This is a Hussein, the guy who started out painting movie boards for Bollywood, you know, and always wore bare feet and, you know, blah, blah, blah. There was the old MF Hussein who kind of rose up from the bottom and rose up and formed part of a group, the Progressives, you know, and made a name for themselves by saying Indian art does not necessarily have to be separate from modern art in the rest of the world. So there's so many ways that you can value art. But you know, you have to be honest with yourself when you look at it. It's you know, how much are people really going to understand? And you know, that's where a place like Delhi Art Gallery, everybody hates, you know, Delhi Art Gallery in some ways, and Ashish Anand sometimes gets picked on horribly. I personally happen to like him. I think he's done a great job. But you know, you have to have institutions that make you understand the value, the cultural value and the history of any given artist and why their artwork is of that value. And I think Delhi Art Gallery does a far better job of that actually than the National Gallery of Modern Art. But the National Gallery of Modern Art is catching up. Kiran Nader does a good job with the contemporaries. MAP is beginning to do it in Bangalore. Sarmaya is beginning to do it in Mumbai. I forget the name of the new place in Kolkata. But all these things are so important to creating in the populace's minds that art has value, that hanging, you know, like behind me, I have 2 kg Supermanians on the wall. You know, those are ink drawings. When I gave my print collection away, I kept a few pieces of art. Those were 2 that I kept. To me, those have value. It's kg Supermanian, you know, it's like I've read his books. So I don't know if I answered your question, but
Yes. Yes,
has
thank
that
you.
helped? Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
it has helped. The historicity is a very, very crucial point. So thank you so much.
And the thing I've avoided in this talk is, like, Dimple Shaw isn't here, I don't think, but I mean performance art, activist art. You know, Akshat Sinha is a dear friend. I don't know if he's here today, you know, organizing groups of people to go out and paint on the walls for social causes. All of that, I give my blessings to. It has its purpose in life. It is transformative. It transforms people's lives. It transforms the people's lives who work on that and do it. But I don't see it's a value creator. So unless you get sponsorships from NGOs and grants from the government or wherever to continue that, I don't see it as a way of survival, at least not in any meaningful way. Survival has to come through the market. That's the world we live in, you know. So,
thank you.
Chandan joined. Hi, Chandan. Who else?
So there's a question in the chat box, Vasu. I'm just going to read it out for you.
Okay.
Hi, Vasu. It's by Dhruv Datta. So, hi, Vasu. Great to hear you speak about your journey. His mic is not working, which is why he's put up the message in the chat. He's not met you personally.
Okay.
However, he's also from a photography background. And 3 years ago, he's moved on to visual art. So I'm assuming it's some kind of form of painting or printmaking or something of that sort. And especially because of your different opinions, I find it interesting. My internet just got cut off for a few minutes when you were talking about art residencies, and you were saying that they could be a trap. Could you repeat that point again? And he also says that he's coming out of a photojournalism background and is in his mid-career moving towards visual arts. So, which is why he wanted to
Well,
hear
I
that.
think photography might be a different animal because the photography market is much smaller and much more difficult than the painting market. I know myself, it's much harder to sell my photographs than it is to sell the miniatures. The miniatures sell very quickly. The photographs I have to work on. Now, there are places like Paris Photo or the Anchor Photo Fest or whatever, where photos do sell and sell for good prices. We were lucky enough to sell some photographs at Paris Photo one year when we were with Abhishek Potter and Tasvir, and we did quite well, very well actually. but I think when you're a photographer, yes, it's a whole different thing, because then you're a photographer, you're looking for commissions to do specific shoots for specific magazines for specific purposes, or you're doing the residencies, which will at least take you places, give you food, give you shelter, give you travel, let you see a new place, let you photograph in a new land. So I can see for a photographer that you might want to extend that residency for a much longer time. And now that you mentioned that, I do know photographers who continue with residencies much later in their life than the average artist does. I just feel that a residency is not necessarily a way, if you just do nothing but residencies, you're never really going to establish yourself as an artist in the market, is my feeling on it. So I don't know if that answers it. So
Hi, Drew. Please do feel free to drop another message in the chat box. Anybody else, guys? Any questions?
no.
Nehal has another question. Yes, Nehal, please.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah, Vasu, I wanted to ask you that can you tell us or maybe elaborate a bit upon the value attached to digital art, or anything that is not hand painted as compared to hand painted or handmade or whatever. Even digital art is hand created, but still, do you think that it is less
Well,
valuable?
I just had a dinner with Abhijit Khanna, Anurag Khanna from Gujarat, who is very famous for collecting video art, which is digital art these days. So video art is India's premier video art collector, and has his own theater set up in his home to project his videos that he collects. And I said, well, I didn't even know. It was like, well, how do you collect a video? And he says, well, they actually come in a very nice portfolio box generally, and it's made, and you get it in a USB port or whatever, and you get some sort of statement about the video, and you get a guarantee that the artist guarantees they will update as technology updates. They will update it. And so it opened my eyes. It was something I didn't really know about. And he was like, so, there's a whole subculture that revolves around video art, and video art I know is very powerful. When I walk into a museum or a gallery, if I see some video art, I'll often be amazed by it. I went to the Venice Biennale one year, and the whole thing was almost video art. It was video art, video art, video art. I don't play that game, so I don't know how you value that. I don't know how the sales are made. That's out of my area of expertise. I'm not poo-pooing it. I did think from the beginning that NFTs were sort of a scam from the beginning. I just could not understand why people would be buying NFTs for thousands of dollars, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars, for a file that exists in blockchain that you store on your computer. Why? I mean, because to be the joy of art is seeing it on the wall and seeing the textures and the colors reflect in the light. I mean, seeing something on the screen is never like seeing it in real life. You're seeing me on the screen now, but I would look much more beautiful in real life, So it's like, I didn't understand NFTs. I was encouraged by a particular gallerist to make some NFTs, so I did. But I said, I'm not going to do still images. I'll do some short moving video art things as NFTs. And the first one I did sold right away. It sold for like $1,200 or whatever. I mean, it sold in F, but it computed out to about $1,200 US. I was shocked. I thought maybe this is something going on, but I was always very suspicious of it. And now, of course, the NFT market has just crashed into the hole, and it seems like it's pretty much dead. We'll see if it's going to be resurrected in any way, but I honestly don't think it will be. So I think it was a fad, is what I'm saying. So, but
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Any questions, guys?
Okay. Satyajit,
Yes.
we're gonna see this on YouTube eventually. You have a recording that you're going to
We have a recording. As I mentioned, I mean, we don't really have plans to put up the whole thing, but in case you're fine with it, we don't mind. We don't mind putting up the whole thing.
no, I'd love it if you put up the whole thing.
All right, perfect.
Or
Then
you
I
can
think
give it to me and I'll put it up, but you know, it'd be nice to have a record of it because we only have a certain number of people here. It'd be nice if other people can watch it later at their leisure because other people I know they have commitments. It's Saturday night, 6 o'clock. That's not a good time.
sure.
So
I think what I'll do is I'll just once the file is done and all, I'll have a conversation with Harsh and then I'll talk to you tomorrow about it. Yeah.
okay,
We can figure it out.
Satyajit. Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you.
See
Okay,
you.
I'm signing off. I forgot
Thank
it's
you.
been
Thank
so
you
long
for
since I've been
doing
on
this.
Zoom. I don't even know how to sign off anymore. Okay, thank you everybody for listening. Bye.
Thanks.